Hey y'all, it's Jessica from Sloppy Swatches. Today I have a look at the Enchanted Fables collection. This is the villains portion that is new to Femme Fatale Cosmetics. These are going to release starting on Thursday, February 1st at 9 a.m. through Monday, February 5th at 9 p.m. These will be available for your favorite stockists, but there will be one polish exclusive that will only be available with purchase of the full collection, and that is Fairy Godmother. I have gone through and done these alphabetically because it is quite a large collection, so this post is going to be quite long. I do also have my blog post up with the polishes alphabetically there as well. If you are interested, I will link it down below. These polishes were sent to me for review. I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. So first up is Big Bad Wolf, and this polish is described as a neutral medium gray curly base with a bold green to red shifting overlay. So here's a quick look at that in the bottle. You can see that shift there so beautifully. It does show up just like that on the nails. I'm going to go ahead and forego the brush shots today, but here's a quick look at how Big Bad Wolf is swatched on my natural nail. So this first coat did go on fairly sheer. I think that's pretty typical for this collection. Most of them are going to take about 3 coats to be completely opaque, but the finishes are worth it. So here's a look at that second coat. 2 coats, it does build up that shimmer, and that's really what's going to carry the opacity here. I did notice maybe a slight tendency to leave those brush strokes, so I do recommend doing a nice long stroke down the middle to kind of minimize that. They do definitely mellow out on their own though, so it's not something that you really have to worry about. Here's a look at my third and final coat, and it does bring this polish completely opaque. It is predominantly that green shift for me with red at extreme angles. So that's a photo of that in direct sunlight. So the next polish is the Blind Witch, and this polish is described as a vibrant teal base packed with golden shimmer. That gold is extremely gorgeous, very vibrant, and just as beautiful on the nails as it is in the bottle. So here's a look at that first easy coat. Again, this one starts out a little bit sheer. You do get a good punch of color there though, and a ton of that gold shimmer already. I'm going to go ahead, complete this coat, cap the tip, let it dry, and then show you how it built up for me with that second coat. So here's a quick look at that. 2 coats for sure amps up that coverage. I did still have a little bit of visible nail line. I do have very hard nail lines anyway, so if you have shorter nails, you may not have to worry about too much, but I am going to go ahead and go in for that third coat. So here's a look at my third and final coat. I did go in a little bit thicker for this one, but it did pull it completely opaque. I did notice a tendency for almost every polish in this collection to dry down to a semi-matte finish, so I do recommend going in with your favorite glossy top coat. So that is a photo of that in direct sunlight. So next up is Bluebeard, and this is the first of 9 thermals in this collection. So this one is described as a gorgeous bright blue when cold to pearlescent turquoise when warm with a green shift. So here it is on the nails. I did swatch on an incredibly cold day, so most of my thermals didn't shift really well in my swatch photos. So I do recommend going in and watching the cup test with these. This one, however, was very sensitive. You can see that it shifts to that almost white, really pearly finish towards my cuticle area when it gets warm, and a deeper, more cobalt blue toward the tips. So 2 coats was really close to being completely opaque. I am going to go ahead and let that dry down and show you how it built up with that third coat. I do like to do 3 coats with thermals anyway, just to get the most massive, strong shift out of that thermal pigment that I can. 3 coats for sure is completely opaque. So here are my teacups. To the left, I have ice cold water, and you can see when I dip it in there, it's automatic reaction. It goes to that deep, gorgeous blue. And then to the right, I have a really hot water. So you may not necessarily get that strong of a shift on your nails, but it is definitely capable of that. In the warm state, you do still have a ton of that really gorgeous shimmer. I'm going to go ahead and show you that side by side. To the left again, I have cold, and to the right, I have the hot. And this is my final swatch photo at an angle in direct sunlight. So next up is Cruella, and this polish is described as a warm brown crowley base that's packed with red to gold shifting glass flecks. So this one is very vampy. Under certain lightings, it's going to pull a little bit more brown, and then under other lightings, it's going to pull a little bit more red. So here's a look at my first easy coat. I did end up going in a little bit heavy-handed with this coat, so it did make for really awesome coverage, but again, I did go in a little bit thicker, so I had to give it a little bit more time to dry. It was really easy to work with, however, it did not pull on me at all. So here's a look at my quick second coat. 2 coats for this one with thicker, careful application did pull this polish completely opaque. The formula is impeccable, and it is one of my top picks just because it was that amazing to work with. So this is my final swatch photo at an angle in that direct sunlight. So next up is the Fox and the Cat, and this is another thermal that's described as a red when cold to bright green when warm, thermal with strong golden shimmer. So this one likes to sit in the middle phase, a rose gold. I did find that this one pulled maybe a little bit more orange on me, and then when it got warm, it did pull a little bit more yellow. So here's a look at that first coat. Really gorgeous color. It's not completely opaque by any means, so I'm going to go ahead, let that dry, and then show you how it built up for me with that second coat. 2 coats adds even more of that gorgeous shimmer. I did still have a little peak of visible nail lines. I'm going to go ahead, complete this coat, let it dry down, and then show you how it built up for me with that third and final coat. So here's a look at that. I did go in for a little bit of a thicker third coat, so if you prefer thin, you may find that you need to go in for that fourth coat. It is definitely worth it. The finish is beautiful, the shift is beautiful, and it's just a really fun, bright polish. So there it is in the natural shift on my nails. Again, to the left I have ice cold water, and as soon as I dip it, it does go to that gorgeous kind of rose gold, kind of orange tone. And then to the right, I have my incredibly hot water, and it pulls it right back to that really gorgeous, what I felt was a yellow. So super pretty both ways. You may not get as strong a shift on your nails, but it is super fun to play with. So there's a quick look at that side by side, and this is my final swatch photo at an angle in that direct sunlight. So next up is Hades, and this polish is described as a bright blue glass reflect that gives this color a shimmery shifting finish that shifts from blue to teal to a luminous purple pink at angles. But this one is a little bit on the thinner side, a little bit more sheer. I think I would utilize this more as a topper. It does have a ton of those glass flecks, and they are super shifty on the nail. It's just a little bit sheer. So I'm going to go ahead and complete that first coat, let it dry, and show you how it built up for me with the 2. So here's a look at that second coat. Again, you get a ton more of those flakies and maybe a little bit more of that teal base. It was still fairly sheer for me though, so I'm going to go ahead and let that dry and show you how it built up for me with that third coat. So here's a look at that. 3 coats kind of pushes this one to the edge of being like a jelly sandwich. So you do still have a ton going on the nail, but I did have a good amount of visible nail line. I do recommend going in for that 4th coat. So this is my final swatch photo at an angle underneath a direct sunlight. So next up is Headless Horseman, and this polish is described as an inky blue jelly that's full of a red to gold to green shifting glass flecks that mimic the fabled unicorn pea pigment. This one is a stunner, super close to my top favorites list, really gorgeous. So this first coat did go on fairly sheer, but it is described as being a jelly, so it is one that you're going to have to build up a little bit, but you can already see how strong those iridescent flakies or multichromatic flakies are in this base. So 2 coats adds a little bit more of that inky blue pigment towards the base, and of course even more of that unicorn pea flaky pigment. It is still fairly sheer here for me though. So I'm going to go ahead and let that dry and then show you how it built up for me with that 3rd coat. I did stop at 3 coats today. I do recommend either going in for that 4th coat or using this one as a topper, but it is stunning. The finish is worth it, and you don't even see all of the shift here. So this is my final swatch photo at an angle in direct sunlight. So next up is Hook, and this is another thermal polish. My swatch photos are not doing most of these justice at all. So this one is described as a mulberry purple when cold to a lighter purple pink with blue glow when warm. So this is another one that's a little bit more on the sheer side. I did find the formula to be a little bit thinner as well, so you may need to watch for pulling or dripping. So there's a look at that first coat. I'll go ahead and let that dry and then show you how it built up for me with that 2nd coat. 2 coats adds to that gorgeous glow on the nail. It does make it a little bit more opaque, but not complete. So I'm going to go ahead, complete this coat, let it dry, and then show you how it built up for me with a 3rd and a final coat. So here's a quick look at that. I did go in a little bit thicker here for this 3rd coat, and it did pull it right to the edge of being completely opaque. I do still have a little bit of visible nail line though, so if you prefer, I do recommend that you go in for that 4th coat. So next I'm going to show you how it reacted in my cups. So this is the natural shift on the nail, very soft and clean looking. To the left I have that ice cold water, and immediately when I dip it, it changes back to that gorgeous kind of deeper blue color. And then to the right I have my warm cups. My camera did not want to focus on all that gorgeousness. It does shift really quickly back to that warm state. I'm going to go ahead and show you how the full mani looks when the tips are warm as well, so you do get a soft pink, pearly, kind of blue glowing, beautiful finish. So there's a quick look at that side by side. And this is my final swatch photo in the cold state in direct sunlight. So next up is the Huntsman, and this is one of the more unique polishes of this collection. This one is described as a rosy brown base with reddish undertones and strong blue glow. So this is kind of a unique mix, but it does work really well, looks super cool on the nail. This one I would describe as kind of a corally base, so it is a little bit sheer here in this first coat. You do get a ton of that blue glow already. I did have a little bit of polish dripping down the stem. You may want to watch out for that just a little bit. It did make that first coat nice and full coverage though, so I'm going to go ahead and let that dry and then show you how it built up for me with that second coat. So here's a quick look at my second coat. Two coats adds more color and more shimmer, but I did still have some visible nail lines. So I'm going to go ahead, let this dry down, and then show you how it built up for me with that third and final coat. So 3 coats pushed this one right to the edge of being completely opaque. It did make for a very beautiful finish on the nails. If you're someone who likes full, complete coverage, you may need to go in for that 4th coat. This is my final swatch photo at an angle in that direct sunlight. So next up is a Madame Medusa, and this is another gorgeous thermal. So this one is described as a bright pink coral when cold that gives way to an opalescent pink when warm. This is one of my top picks. Super bright and very summer kind of vivid on the nails, really fun to play with. So 1 coat again goes on nice and easy, just a little bit sheer. So I'm going to go ahead and complete this coat and then show you how it built up for me with that second. So here's a look at that second coat. This is another thermal that's not really showing off how beautiful that shift was. My hands were extremely cold this day, so it does shift beautifully to a gorgeous, natural, almost gradient look. 2 coats was really close to being full coverage. I did still have some visible nail lines. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how it built up for me with that third and final coat. I was really happy here with the coverage. In 3 coats, you get a ton of shimmer, a ton of coverage, and a beautiful, bright, vivid pink. So here it is in the natural shift on a normal day. So again, to the left, I have my ice cold water, immediate reaction to that beautiful deeper pink. And then I'll show you how it shifted in the warmer water here to the right cup. So it almost goes to a full white. If I could find the reverse of this polish, I think I would live in it forever, but it's just nice and clean and classy looking, and of course, very fun to play with. So here's a look at that side by side. I have the warm to the left and the cold to the right. And this is my final swatch photo at an angle in that direct sunlight. So next up is Maleficent, and this one is described as a deep, rich magenta with a soft green to pink multi-chrome finish. So this is a true multi-chrome. The finish is a little bit softer maybe in some of other colors that you've seen that are multi-chromes, but the formula on this one is amazing. 1 coat went on super smooth. It's not completely opaque, but you can tell you get a good amount of coverage here in just this first coat. Again, just be a little bit mindful with those brush strokes. They do mellow out pretty well on their own. So here's a look at that second coat. 2 coats, honestly, 2 thicker, careful coats. It did bring this polish completely opaque. If you go super thin, you may need to do 3, but I was really happy with the finish and shift at 2. So again, I'm going to show you underneath my artificial lighting. I'm just moving my hand here to different angles to try to show off all of those colors. It did predominantly show green for me, but it did shift that beautiful purple and pink. So this is my final swatch photo at an angle in that direct sunlight. And next up is the Mouse King. So this polish is described as an olive glass reflect that has a shimmery shifting finish that shifts from a golden olive to a luminous blue. I didn't really catch the blue in my photos at all. This almost gives me a kind of olive bronze vibe with strong glass finish. So there's a look at that first coat. This one does go on fairly sheer as well. 2 coats really amps up that coverage, but it's not completely there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this coat and show you how it built up for me with that third and final one. I did have to do a little bit of cleanup here with acetone and a cleanup brush, but 3 coats made for pretty nice coverage. I did still have some visible nail line at angles, so if you want complete coverage, you may need to go in for that 4th coat. So this is a look at my completed mani at an angle in direct sunlight. Next up is the Pied Piper, and this polish is described as a sea green jelly full of pink to gold to green shifting glass flakes that mimic that unicorn pea pigment. So this one mainly showed as the vibrant teal for me. I think at angles it did pull off that unicorn shift that shifts from pink to green to gold. 1 coat went on super smooth, really easy to work with, just very sheer. So I'm going to go ahead and let that dry and then show you how it built up for me with that second coat. 2 coats, it does of course add more of that pigment and more of that shimmer. I did still have quite a bit of visible nail line though, so I'm going to go ahead and let this dry and then show you how it built up for me with that third and final coat. So here's a quick look at that. I did go in maybe for a little bit of a thicker third coat. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot. I found that the formula for these Femme Fatale collections was pretty cohesive and that most of them are 3-coaters. If you want to go super, super thin, you may need to do 4, but the finishes are beautiful. So that is my final swatch photo at an angle in direct sunlight. So next up is Queen of Hearts, and this polish is described as a red when cold to pink when warm thermal with strong green to pink shifting glass fleck shimmer. This is such a quintessential Valentine's Day polish. I think this would be all you needed really for that day, and I love it. It is one of my top picks. One coat went on pretty sheer, but it did go on nice and evenly, really smoothly. So here's a look at our second coat. Second coat almost gets us there. It does add more flex and more of that finish. I do like to go in for 3 coats with thermals anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and let this dry and then show you how it built up for me with that third and final coat. So here's a look at that. 3 coats, it did bring this polish completely opaque with no issues at all. It did dry down a little bit matte, so I do recommend going in with your favorite glossy top coat for any of these polishes really. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how it performed in my cup. So to the left, I have that ice cold water. Here it is on the natural shift on my nails. Again, my hands were fairly cold that day, so the cold doesn't shift it too much. That is pretty much the cold state. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how it shifted warm as well to the right, and it made such a beautiful shade. I typically don't think of red and pink going together, but it works so well in this combination, especially with that glass fleck shimmer. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that side by side, and here's a quick look at that. So super pretty, very Valentine's Day. This is my final swatch photo at an angle in that direct sunlight. So next up is a Rumpelstiltskin, and this is another top pick for me. It was really hard to narrow these down, but this one is described as a navy when cold to tan when warm with a reddish glow. So it does have that lit from within reddish glow in it. So beautiful. This first coat, again, does go on fairly sheer. It's what I've come to expect from these polishes. It kind of allows that shimmer to build up to be glowing from within because you get to see a little bit of it peeking through the layers. So here's a look at that second coat. 2 coats amps up that shimmer and amps up that coverage, but it's not completely opaque. Again, this one is not shifting as heavily on the nail as it would typically. It does have a nice kind of more delicate shift to it anyway. But here's a look at that third coat. 3 coats, it did push this one right to the edge of completely opaque. Sometimes at certain angles I could still see a little bit of visible nail line, so if you wanted to, you could totally go in for that 4th coat. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how this performed in my cups. Just that shot right there makes this one my favorite because it is so beautiful underneath all lighting sources. My cup to the left didn't really shift it a ton because it is already pretty much in the cold state. Then the cup to the right does pull it to that lighter shade. This one is a little bit more of a delicate shift, but it is beautiful in both ways. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a quick side by side so you can really tell the difference more a little bit there. I think my cup to the right wasn't super hot at this point either. So there's a look at that side by side. And this is my final swatch photo at an angle in direct sunlight. So next up is Scar. And you guys, this is another top pick for me. I know this is kind of almost half the collection, but this one is described as a rich mustard crelly base with ethereal pink glow. So this polish is every bit as tawny as the name implies. Really cool on the nail. Very unique to my collection as well. So here's a look at that first easy coat. This one went on nice and easy. For a mustard, it already has, a nice amount of coverage. I do still have a good amount of nail line showing, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how it built up for me with that second coat. I am wearing my base coat here, so I can't really report on staining. I didn't have any from this collection, but I haven't worn them for a super long length of time either. So 2 coats, it does make for beautiful coverage and a ton of shimmer, but it's not completely opaque, so I am going to go ahead and go in for this third and final coat. You can see here my second coat was just a little bit wet when I went in for that third coat, but 3 coats, it does bring this polish completely opaque. So here's a look at that at an angle in direct sunlight. So next up is Sir Hiss, and I think that a lot of people are going to be excited about this one. I'm so ready to see bright neon colors, and I'm so summer ready. So this one is described as a strikingly bright lime green with a subtle copper glow. I think that copper glow showed up really well, even with this being a super neon base. It is recommended that if you purchase this polish to not put it in direct sunlight. It does have a fluorescent pigment that kind of can react to that light. So here's a look at that second coat. Two coats bring this one really close to being completely opaque. I am swatching here on my pinky, so I have less area to cover, so it may be going on a little bit thicker, but it did make for awesome coverage. It can depend really on your application, but I did two coats and I was really happy there. So that was my final swatch photo at an angle in that direct sunlight. And next up is Ursula. So this one is described as a plum purple when cold that gives way to a softer, lighter pink when warm with a turquoise shimmer in there. So here's a quick look at how Ursula swatched on my natural nail. This one is fairly sheer in this first coat. It also didn't react maybe as strongly as it should have. I did have super cold hands this day. So I'm going to go ahead and complete that coat and then show you how it built up for me with a second coat. So two coats adds more of that gorgeous shimmer and a little bit more of that duochrome effect. I did go in a little bit thicker here with the second coat. I did have some flooding. I had to go in and clean up with acetone and a cleanup brush. No issues at all, no staining or anything like that. I just was getting a little bit thicker and too heavy-handed here. So I'm going to go ahead and let that dry, clean up that area really quick. You can see here how easy that is to take care of, so no issues. And then show you how it built up for me with that third and final coat. So this third coat does push it right to the edge of being completely opaque. Again, at strong angles, I did still have some visible nail line. If you don't like that at all, you may want to go in for that fourth coat, but this one is very soft and ethereal, super shifty on the nail. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how it shifted for me in my cups. To the left is that ice cold water, and it brings it to that deeper, more predominantly green shade. And then to the right, it is a very hot water here, but it does shift it to a super beautiful light pink with a really strong shimmer. I do prefer this one in the warm shade, just really cool. So there's a look at that side by side, and then this is my final swatch photo at an angle in direct sunlight. So next up is Wicked Stepsisters, and this is another thermal, I want to say it's a top pick, but I know my top picks list is getting pretty full, but this one is for sure beautiful. So this one is described as a bold fuchsia when cold that transitions to a soft pink and pearlescent when warm with a green shimmer. So here's a look at that first coat. This one almost has like a micro glass flick finish in that shimmer, super pretty. One coat, fairly sheer. I'm going to go ahead and let that dry and then show you how it built up for me with two coats. Two coats adds more of that gold shimmer. I think that gold shimmer is really what's going to push this into being completely opaque, but I do still have some visible nail lines. I'm going to go ahead and let that one dry down and show you how it built up for me with that third coat. Three coats did bring this polish completely opaque for me with a beautiful shift and a beautiful shimmer. So I'm going to show you how this reacted in my cups really quickly. So to the left here, I have that ice cold water, and it was pretty much almost in the cold state there on the nails. And then to the right, I have that super hot water. So that's going to bring it to that light pink with that beautiful shimmer. Super, super pretty. You can already see it shifting there. It's like pretty much a reverse shift there. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the side by side. And that one is just very soft and very subtle and beautiful. So this is my final swatch photo at an angle in that direct sunlight. So next up is a Wicked Witch of the West, and this polish is described as a darker green teal when cold to a lighter green or lime when warm with a turquoise overlay. So this one is completely full of a multi-chromatic flakies. It does start out fairly sheer here, as you can see with our first coat. I'm going to go ahead, complete this coat, let it dry, and show you how it built up for me with that second coat. So you guys like totally tired of hearing that already or what? So here's a look at our second coat. Two coats like a true jelly polish is going to add more of those flakies and more of that finish, but it's not completely opaque for me. So I'm going to go ahead, complete this coat, let it dry, and show you how it built up for me with that third and final coat. So here's a quick look at that. I did go in fairly thicker here with this third coat, but I did still have a good amount of visible nail line. If you wanted to go in for that fourth coat, I would very much recommend it. So I am going to test this one in my water cups for you. I did not have very strong of a shift here, but I did want to go ahead and note it. My hot water may not have been super, super hot, but it does go maybe just a touch lighter. It was really hard to tell. So I did just want to go ahead and show you guys that. This one is listed as a thermal though. I don't know if it was specifically my bottle or what was going on, but this is my final swatch photo at an angle in the cold shift and direct sunlight. So next up is Yzma, right? Yzma. And this one is described as a vibrant, cool tone purple with soft reddish glow and blue glass fleck. So I am living for this purple with the blue glass fleck finish. Super gorgeous, and the formula is as amazing as well. So here's a look at that first easy coat. Again, I am swatching on my pinky here, so I have less area to cover, so it does make for nicer coverage anyway. But one coat was pretty awesome. I do still have some visible nail line, but go ahead and let that dry. Show you how it built up for me with that second and final coat for this one. So 2 coats. It did bring this one completely opaque. I think if you go in super thin, you may need to go in for that 3rd coat. Again, the finish is completely worth it. This one screams spring to me. So there's a look at my final swatch photo at an angle in that direct sunlight. And next up, let's talk about Fairy Godmother. So this one is the exclusive that is only available with Femme Fatale Cosmetics and only with the entire collection. So this one is described as a barely there blue base filled with red iridescent glitters, silver holographic glitters and pigment, and red to green shifting flaky. So this one is like if an opalescent and a holographic polish made a beautiful baby. This would be that polish plus with that gorgeous red shimmer. So one coat is fairly sheer. This one could also double as a topper if you wanted to. 2 coats is going to add more of those flakies in both the holographic and opalescent finish, as well as more of that red shimmer. I don't think you're really going to get this polish completely opaque unless you wanted to go in with the sponge method, but it does make for a really gorgeous glass-like finish. So here's a look at that 3rd and final coat that I'll be showing you today. Completely every inch and centimeter of the nail is covered in something beautiful and shimmery. I did still have a little bit of visible nail line though. So this is my final swatch photo at an angle in that direct sunlight, and that does wrap up my swatch and review of the Enchanted Fable collection, the Villains Edition. These will be available starting on February 1st and then trickle down to your favorite stockists. If you're interested in seeing any more photos of any of the polishes featured here today, I do have those available on my blog at sloppyswatches.com. Thank you so much for watching this video, and a big thank you to Femme Fatale Cosmetics for sending them my way. I'm so happy to be able to share them with you. Femme is for sure one of my favorite brands, and all of these polishes are gorgeous. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested, I also am available on Instagram at Sloppy Swatches. So thanks so much for watching, guys. See you next time.